This episode is sponsored by Kendo UI. Kendo UI allows you to build better apps faster. They have a comprehensive library ranging from data grids and charts to buttons and sliders. Plus, you can use their components as plain JavaScript as well as in Angular, React, and Vue. They have a large collection of customizable popular themes like Bootstrap and Material. Go check them out at javascriptjabber.com/KendoUI. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Views on Vue. This week on our panel we have Erik Hanchett, author of Vue.js in Action.
Hey Chuck.
We also have Joe Eames, organizer of the Framework Summit.
Hey everybody.
Author.
Sorry, cut you off. That great intro and I cut you off. Hey everybody.
I'm Charles Max Wood from devchat.tv. And this week I actually put this topic in for a couple of reasons. And so I'll just kind of kick things off. First of all, I've had a lot of people ask me how to get a job as a new developer in particular. The other reason is because I've been working on this course, and I keep promising to put it out. Of course, we're recording this about 6 or 7 weeks before the episode goes live. So the episode will be out by the time this goes live. So if you're out there and you're looking at the course, go to devchat.tv. Just click on the link for store products. I can't remember what it is, but you'll see it there. And it's just the getting a job course. I think I named it Get a Coder Job. So anyway, you can get that and we'll talk through some of the stuff that's in the course. But anyway, this is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately and talking to a lot of people lately. And a lot of people kind of go about it the wrong way. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about that. And then I have a couple of questions for our other panelists. But primarily what people do is they go out and they kind of spread their resume around as much as they can. And then it works out that, nobody calls them back. Or they'll get in for an interview and then they, walk out of there not knowing what's going to happen and they never get called back for that. And there are a few reasons for that. And there are a few things that you can do to make things better. And so that's what my course is on, is it's essentially, there's a better way and here's what the better way is. I'm a little curious, as we dive into this, Erik and Joe, how did you guys get your first developer jobs?
So yeah, I'll jump in here first. So this is kind of a topic that I actually to go over occasionally on my YouTube channel on erik.video. And it's something that's very interesting because there's two thoughts here where you have some people that go the traditional route of getting an education. And that's kind of what I did. So to answer your question, Chuck, yeah, I went to a university, got a 4-year computer science degree. And then that really opened a lot of doors when I went and applied for jobs. So I applied for a couple of jobs. I actually realized that even though I had a computer science degree, I really needed to study for my interviews because I got, the gauntlet of in-person interviews with whiteboarding and I
love the whiteboard interviews.
Yep. Take home tests. And I'm like, wow, this is a lot harder than I realized. Finally, I found a company that I did okay enough on the whiteboarding test to get my first job. And that's kind of how I broke in. I guess technically before that, I had I've always done some web development on the side and I had an internship while I was in college. And that was when I just kind of applied for and worked my way into. The other route to finish my thought there was the kind of the self-taught route, which I think a lot of people are getting into. Either they have some college or no college, or they're going from a different field to become a programmer and developer. And that's definitely a different answer than what I went through.
How about you, Joe?
Kind of the opposite route. I think I took one programming class at a college level, and I think I did an AB computer science, and I was working this job, and one other manager asked my manager if he could spare any of his programmers. He said, no, but I have this guy I think that's taking some programming classes. You can have him. And so they handed me, this is back in the 90s, they handed me a big, thick stack of books on the Foxborough programming language and said, if you could do this, come next Monday, then I want you to program for me. So I just read books, and Monday morning I did my best to get some stuff done. I mean, they paid me nearly nothing. I mean, just a little bit above minimum wage, but I figured it out.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I mean, talking about these different ways of getting in, I've talked to quite a number of people preparing for the course, and I think the most, like, if you want the gap between your training, whatever, whether it's self-taught or a boot camp or whatever, and getting a job, it seems like getting the 4-year degree is kind of the most surefire way. People are willing to take a little bit more of a chance on you if you have the 4-year degree. But even then, I mean, I've met a few people that have gotten their 4-year degree and then they get that first job and then they're kind of stuck. They don't know how to move on or move up. And so that's another problem. But then you also get people out of the boot camps or self-taught, which costs a lot less and takes a lot less time, but then it's harder to get that job when you think you're ready. And so it's interesting to see how that all works out. I do know quite a number of people, though, that kind of had what Joe described happen to them, where, a little bit of programming and we need this kind of work done. So can you maintain our website, or can you write a couple of scripts or some macros for Excel or something like that? And then you kind of pick it up that way.
Yeah, I think that's more common, really. I mean, I think the people going to college to get 4-year degrees for computer science to get into development and programming, being an engineer, has become more rare. I mean, so many people are just skipping college altogether, or they're coming from different fields, or they were in IT, or they're Joe's story and they're moving in. I think that's become more common. I'm kind of like an old dinosaur that actually went and got a degree, which is okay, because I've worked with people from boot camps. I've worked with self-taught developers, which are super sharp. They do an awesome job. I mean, the old adage that you need a degree to get a programming or developer job is just not true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting, though, that even though you don't need a degree, like Chuck said, it is the most sure way to enter the industry. So there is a lot of value still to it, but there are definitely shortcuts, and the more shortcuts you take, the more risk you take about it. So I've had a ton of experience. I pulled my daughter out of high school and put her in a boot camp when she was 16. And that turned out to not be a good idea. She wasn't prepared to just go through a 3-month boot camp and get enough skills from that to be able to get a job. I've done a lot of teaching at one of the local boot camps. I teach their last day very frequently. I probably taught it 10 times, which is just on interviewing. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what the actual numbers are, but for just a typical normal boot camp that a random city may have, I'll bet that only about a third of the developers that graduate actually get a job in short order, and maybe another third will eventually go on and become programmers, and probably about a third will not do it. They'll go off and do something else. And that's probably okay, because there's a reasonable chance that the third that goes off and does something okay, they either really don't want to be a programmer, or it's just not the right job for them. Maybe they just don't quite have the commitment. It's that middle third that's kind of that it wasn't super easy for them, or maybe they just didn't have enough time to just spend all day long doing it, but they really still wanted to get it done. And so they kind of slog away, and maybe the boot camp doesn't work, so they try something else. But I also feel like there's a lot of employers for which a single 3-month boot camp just doesn't give you enough skills for them. Mm-hmm. But yet a 4-year degree really doesn't necessarily give you much in the way of skills either, depending on what the curriculum is. Because when you come out, when you want a job, what they want is they want you to be decent with Angular or React, or, Vue is growing now, and some .NET or Java on the back end, or whatever it is they use on their back end, right? And that's not necessarily this type of stuff you learn at school. You might learn some web programming and some JavaScript, and you might have one class that includes some Java, but you got a lot of other stuff. So you're not necessarily coming out of there with the hit the ground running type of skills either. And you spend 4 years doing that. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, with my degree, of course, I was a computer engineering major, not a computer science major, but still, when I graduated, if I had graduated with the skill set that I had learned in school, I would have graduated knowing how to code in Java, C++, and C. And, there are a lot of Java jobs out there, but
C, that's like super in demand today.
Oh yeah, totally. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily set you up for that. One other thing that I would also point out is that the indicator that I see that makes the most difference for people as far as being able to get a job or get that first job is how many people they know and who they know, as opposed to necessarily what they know. I mean, they have to have kind of a base level I can learn this stuff, or I'm good at this stuff kind of, skill level where they're passable, they can come and make some kind of contribution. But a lot of times the people who get the jobs are the ones that have some connection out there in the community where somebody knows them and their skill level well enough to say they're about this good and we can get them up to speed 3 months.
Yeah, I think that's true. Going back to the conversation about degrees, even though I say that I'm kind of a rare breed, there's definitely tons of benefits of having a degree. And first, the HR firewall that's out there, because so many people are trying to get into this field right now. It's super packed. I would say a lot of not high level, that's not a good word. The senior level. There's not a ton of senior level developers, but there's a lot of junior level developers that are trying to get into the field. So having any kind of degree that gets you past that HR firewall so you can at least talk to somebody and actually maybe get on the interview, that really helps you out. And going back to your point, Chuck, with the you knowing people obviously is one of the, in any type of industry is really important. And so if you are in a curriculum at your college that has a good alumni network, that has counselors that are going to help you, and maybe good professors that know people that work in the industry, like my professor pretty much knew all the different hiring managers in our city, you can get those connections to get those interviews right away too. And so that's another benefit. Of course, the corollary to that is you could do that on your own. And if you're taking a boot camp, they do offer a lot of, I think, Joe, you said like the last part of the boot camp is teaching people how to interview. And that's some skill. That is a skill that you definitely need to get a job in the industry. But they also, I'm sure they have also people that they know that they can get you a job at.
I'll tell you that having talked to people both who work at boot camps and who have graduated from boot camps, it depends on the boot camp. Some of them are much better connected than others, and some of them care a lot more about that than others. And so it's not a given.
I think, though, the biggest differentiator by far is the student over the camp.
Oh, totally.
I see a huge difference almost cut when I go to these classes again. I can almost cut those classes into 3 just by looking at them and say, all right, this is the third that worked 12 hours a day while they were going to boot camp. This is the third that worked hard and is probably still going to stick with it. And this is the third that parents were paying for it. They're just showing up just because they thought this was an easy way to make a lot of money, whatever. They're not really interested in what they're doing. And so the person themselves makes a huge difference for sure. Your dedication, your desire, that sort of thing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Isn't that a kind of a cop-out, though, Joe? Because couldn't you say, like, well, this class didn't do so well because half the people weren't motivated, when if the curriculum was better and the teachers were better and that they may have done better? Because no one likes to blame themselves, I guess, if someone fails to go through boot camp.
Yeah, but right. I've met a lot of people who have gone through boot camps who, they would pick up whatever was taught in the class and then they'd spend 3 or 4 hours outside of class learning more deeply and things like that. And those are the people that are much more likely to be able to get that job that we're talking about here. And I think that's the point that Joe's making.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you definitely want to, like you said, Eric, there are a lot of junior developers entering the field, and it may or may not be anywhere near the number of actual developers in the field, but the ratio of junior developers to actual jobs, like the demand slide, is way on one side when it comes to junior developers, way on the other side when it comes to senior developers. The senior developer level, there's 10 jobs for every developer. At the junior developer level, there's 10 people for every job. So anything you can do to differentiate yourself or to give you that leg up. So if you're going to go to the boot camp route, choosing the best boot camp is important, but also you yourself and how much you're going to work and study and try and consider that this is going to be a super hard thing. And you've just got to put in the time and the effort, and there's no snoring through it and still end up with a 6-figure job, You look at like Hack Reactor, the gold standard of boot camps. They're a little bit longer and they do 6 days a week and 12 hours a day, where most boot camps are 5 days a week and 8 hours a day, or if they're full time, right? There's a major difference, but the big difference, of course, with Hack Reactor is just the fact that they can filter through so many more applicants. Most our boot camps here, they accept pretty much 100% of the applicants. Hack Reactor accepts a very small percentage, and that's another reason why they don't even necessarily care if you can pay or not, because they know that if you're good enough, you meet their criteria, you're going to graduate, you're going to get a job, you're going to make so much money, you can easily pay their fees. So,
which is like $10,000 to $20,000, right?
Yeah, I think they're right close. They're probably much closer to that 20 to 30. Honestly, the local boot camp is like 15 grand here in Utah. So that Hack Reactor is closer to 30. And I know now they're coming out with a lot of these boot camps that their model is you just pay us a percentage of your salary. There's one here in Utah that's like that. You pay us a percentage of your salary for the first year or two. And we take very little. They take very little up front, like a down payment, basically.
Yeah. I will say, though, that the reason that the people who go out and, work their tail off to get the job is because these companies aren't out there going, oh, we really need somebody to train, right? We want a project. Will you be our project?
Yeah.
That's not what they're out there for. That's not what they're about. They're out there saying, we need to make a living. We need to make money. And we can't get all the work done that we know we need to do in order to do that. So we need somebody to come in here and, solve these problems with code. That's what they're looking for. And so if you're the kind of person that's going to go out there and spend an extra 2, 3, 4 hours outside of class working your butt off to know this stuff and learn this stuff and do this stuff, then when you go in and you interview with them and you can demonstrate to them that you're going to spend 3 or 4 hours outside of class coming up to speed. I mean, it's not something you have to do forever, but you're going to learn the stuff that they need you to know so you can contribute. They're more likely to take a chance on you as a new developer than if you're the kind of person that just kind of skated through and the bare minimum because that's what was in the curriculum. And I think that speaks to the difference. And then the other thing, and I said it before, is if you know people who can give you the chance to get in front of people and you've been that kind of student, that makes it a whole lot easier because you can get in front of a whole bunch of people and you're more likely to run into the companies that are willing to take a chance on you if it looks like you're going to come up to speed quickly and start contributing right away.
I think another thing that can help, I think that right now we've got universities, we've got boot camps. That's kind of the two main ways. And there aren't a ton of other options. There are some online boot camps to be a little bit more fluid and flexible. But I think that we're serving a very minor part of the public, right? So the universities kind of crummy because it costs a ton of money and a ton of time. And most of that money is wasted and time is wasted, right? And maybe that's wrong to say most of it, but a lot of that money and time is wasted. Right? You're doing a lot of stuff that you didn't necessarily need to get into the industry and get a job.
That's not true. It's not wasted. don't be a hater of colleges.
So
I love colleges.
No,
the point is to get a job, right? If your point is to get a job, I can go to college and I can take fantastic classes on all kinds of things like guitar, but that is not going to help me in my job. I was programming for like 15 years before I finally decided to sit down and study data structures and algorithms, right? Finally decided I sit down and I spent like 300 hours over the course of 6 months studying data structures and algorithms. Up until that point, I probably could have used that knowledge that I'd gained 3, maybe 4 times in my career. Learned it pretty reasonably. I would say the equivalent of a couple of 5-hour classes. And then when I was done, now it's been like 5, 6 years, I think I've used that knowledge once, right? Cool stuff, awesome knowledge, totally nothing wrong with learning that type of a thing. Taking a compiler's class, nothing wrong with that. But when you're talking about your average business programming job, that sort of stuff is not what I would call the critical this is stuff that you need to get a job and to do well in your job, right? What you need is good solid logic skills, and then some actual like programming languages that people are using, projects, real world projects. So let me contrast that with another university that I actually know of. It's here in Utah. This is almost like a weird mixed university. I've hired several developers from it. It's called Newmont University. Mm-hmm. They used to be a shorter program. Now they're 3 calendar years, but it's a full 4-year accredited university. But the last full year that you're there, the last 12 months, you spend it 100% doing client project work for clients that the university gets. That's your classes. You're not getting paid for it. It's your class to go in there and do this work. And they're structuring around the first 2-ish years. They're teaching you more learn this language and learn this language. And they have like a web programming course focus, or you could choose from like 5 different paths. One of them's web programming. One of them's like back-end programming, or there's a game programming one. But after that 1 year of experience, I hired like 4 developers from there. They were night and day above your typical university graduate as far as what they could do and how well they performed for us. It was a huge difference. So that kind of stuff is super valuable.
Deploy more, pay less with DigitalOcean, the simplest all-in-one cloud computing platform for developers. Scale and run cloud applications faster and more efficiently with effortless administration tools to robust compute, flexible configurations, networking services, real-time alerts, and rapid provisioning, while enjoying industry-leading price to performance with a flat pricing structure across all global data center regions at any usage volume. Spend more time building better web apps and less time worrying about managing infrastructure with DigitalOcean. Build your next app on DigitalOcean. Get started with a free $100 credit at do/co/views-on-view.
Yeah, I think it depends on the curriculum and the college. I mean, the old school curriculum where you're learning C, C++, and a little bit of Java, and that's everything is in there. That's your whole curriculum, the only languages that you learn. I think that's changing depending on what it is. Of course, computer science is a lot of math. It's not necessarily just programming, but there's kind of other programs like computer engineering, which has more of a focus on the actual programming aspects, like the college you just mentioned, Joe, which are taking these type of classes, are teaching these type of classes. I know at my university, they would have graduate students that would teach elective classes on like JavaScript and web development, and they may even touch on frameworks, things like that. So I think it's changing a little bit, depending on. I mean, if you're 18 years old and you just graduated high school, or 17 years old and you just graduated high school and you're looking at college and you want to become a developer, take a good look at what they're offering, how the school is accredited, where it's ranked, and then look at the senior and high level classes. But even a traditional computer science curriculum, you may not be learning how to, do JavaScript and how to do CRUD applications for your web app. But you are going to learn some problem solving skills, and you're going to learn some algorithms, which you may not use those exact algorithms in your job, but you can kind of extrapolate some of those things that you're learning, the type of problem solving, to what you're doing on your day-to-day job.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely true. But I would also put in the counterpoint that if you're the type of person, like, I loved my math classes and I loved my physics classes in high school, right? So in order to be effective, and I've seen this with my daughter, right? She's not a big fan of math, and she never was. And so what she struggles is the logic, right? She has trouble where we need to get this thing done, right? And the boot camp that they went to, they did they called it a toy problem every day, where they said, here's a toy problem, you just need to figure this out. And it's almost like the whiteboard coding type stuff. And that's the type of stuff that she struggled with. So those sorts of classes will get you that skill. They're almost, the way that they're going about it, like, I do some advanced math or take these algorithms courses. In the end, what they're doing is getting you that skill of, can you think logically through a problem? Can you break down a problem into small pieces, think logically through it so that you can ultimately, regardless of the language, write an algorithm that solves this problem, right? That solves the problem of how do I get from A to B, right? Getting that skill is important. If you've already got that skill, though, then taking all those classes, like for you, the math classes that you took, how much of that math have you used in your career?
I'm a math minor, but I don't. I guess every now. The other day, I had to pull out my book and figure out how I was going to do this one type of problem. So occasionally, Not a ton. No, I mean, I understand your point there. I just feel like there's this huge backlash from a lot of developers all over the place that are just anti-college, and I don't know why so many people are anti-college. Yeah, I have to be like the lone person that defends college when we ever get in conversation.
Well, I think that there's something else going on. Hold on, Jack. I want to make another point about this. Okay. There's something else going on, and that is that a lot of people are going and taking a computer science degree, which is totally awesome. But there is this like research, more academic aspect of what is computer science as a science, right? And that is not what we do in our jobs, right? I'm not doing computer science in my jobs, right? I just need to get stuff done using basic tools and techniques. So if I could take the college, what college is doing is advancing the discipline of computer science as a whole, which from everything from the compilers and the CPUs all the way up, right, to people thinking about, is TDD really a valuable thing or not, right? Doing studies on that. It blends ultimately into these PhDs where people are expanding the knowledge base that we have. But when we're talking about, I want to get a job and I want to be a programmer, I would much rather that somebody spends a year in college actually doing real world projects for a client, right? Or whether that client is an actual client or a boss. Do some real world projects. Get some deal with what it's like to actually live in an agile environment where you're doing sprints and see that. Be given a problem that you have to sit and bang your head against the wall that isn't something out of a textbook, but actually like a big project, right? Like put a whole website together and collaborate with a large group. And there's some of that, but I think there's way too much time spent on the science of computer science and not enough time in a typical, especially computer science degree, spent on learn to be a good employee in a programming environment so that when you get out, you can, like I said, that New Mountain School, they weren't teaching they were skipping a lot of the classes you saw in computer science, but we would hire them hands down over a graduate from the University of Utah, which is an extremely highly rated scientific school, engineering school. But we would hire them every day because they were learning what to us was really practical. And they were coming out of there not with like, hey, you now know JavaScript, right? It wasn't just that they knew JavaScript. It was that they had walked through an entire project. So we knew that if we gave them a problem that was hard and they had to really work to get over it, that they would still be able to figure it out with minimal amount of help from somebody else. And we would just, do some code reviews and stuff, but they could actually act as a really independent, not, we got to really hold hands for, 6 months. So that idea that, what was it you, Chuck said, what I need is a project. We're looking for a project. We're looking for somebody to train. We never saw those graduates as that. We just looked at them as they weren't senior level. They were below senior level, but they were still productive, contributing members of the team.
Well, and that's the whole point, right? Is that you were looking for somebody that you could bring in and they could just jump in and get to work. And, yes, you knew that there was probably going to be some training and bringing up to speed involved, but ultimately those are the people you were looking to hire. Right. And if you're looking at it strictly from the standpoint of, I want to be a developer, okay, and ignore all the rest of this stuff. I want to be a developer. From that point, there's a huge opportunity cost to getting a 4-year degree. Mm-hmm. Now, if you want to go in and you want to learn all the theory and you want to learn some of the history of computing and you want to learn a lot of this stuff. And I find that, also in a 4-year degree, at least for me, I learned how to think about certain types of problems in a productive way. And so even though I don't learn the specific or use the specific techniques day in, day out, so there are things that you get from a 4-year degree that may make it worth it to you. But if you're just looking for what's the quickest road to getting me to have a job that's paying me to write software and pays me a decent amount of money, there's a huge opportunity cost when you're looking at the 4-year degree. But if you want to go in and you want to understand the theory and you want to understand the science and you want to be able to, maybe get into a little bit more of the experimental side of how we write software and a lot of the mathematical, scientific, provable parts of software, then a computer science degree is definitely the way to go.
Yeah, and there's other degrees other than you could look at AI, you can look at more scientific levels of development and programming that probably require a degree more. You
Yeah,
get
machine
open
learning.
machine learning. Yeah, there's something in the academic world too. You have to have a degree too, so that helps. And also, I was going to say my program that I went through, our senior class, we broke up into teams of 3 or 4 people, and they had probably a half a dozen to maybe 10 different companies in town came to our classroom and pitched ideas of things that they wanted to add to their apps, or they wanted some project being done. So they pitched to our class, and then each one of us in our class got to choose if we wanted to work with one of those companies. So my team worked with General Electric, GE, and created something for them. And that was our senior project. So we had deadlines that we had to fulfill. We had to talk to their project manager. We went over their requirements documents. It was more like a waterfall process at the time. So there is some, going back to, depending on the college and the curriculum, there's some ones that you can actually interact with companies and kind of get some of that real world experience in your program. Also, I interned my last year, so I was a part of a team where we had to do a lot of those things I wasn't learning in school. So I think that helped too. But then it goes back to the student. So some students are going to cruise through their computer science degree. They're just going to kind of skate by with a low GPA, and they're not going to learn anything else other than what they've learned in classes. But the students that do really well are the ones that are going to go for those internships. They're going to try to intern at Google over the summer. They're going to learn web development on the side where they're taking their data structures class. And then so when they get out of college, they won't have as much time as someone that was doing it full time, but they'll have those skills. So when they go to those first interviews, they'll be like, oh yeah, here's some web development project I did on the side. Here's my portfolio. So, and then plus I have a degree. So you can make the argument that someone that works really hard in their program too can come out. And it is a big, huge opportunity. There's an opportunity cost of 4 years or 5 or 6.
But there is the similar opportunity cost on the other end, right? You take a boot camp. If that's not enough to get you in the industry, then there's a lot of money and a small amount of time comparatively wasted.
Well, and then you have to go and do all of the rest of the work on your own. So you're going to spend a lot of time flailing around and, going down some rabbit holes that don't pay off and things like that. So there's definitely a trade-off that way too.
Yeah, one thing that universities have is they have a really good onboarding for out of high school, right? For people that are interested in this degree or interested in this field, but aren't necessarily the most self-starter, right? You have grades, you have expectations, and there's a structure there that can help people work through those issues. You get to the boot camps, and they're kind of, deep. They're a deeper end of the pool than university is. University is certainly a deeper end of the pool than high school is, but boot camps is even a deeper end of the pool. Here's 3 months. Bunch of stuff to get through, and you got to keep up. If you don't keep up, there's nobody holding your hand. We put out some tutors and stuff, but there's really not there's not a way back. We want your money. We spent the time and effort on you. So we expect you to put it in and be really a lot, yet another level up. And so it's just not a great way for everybody, for certain.
So maybe the best route is self-taught. Everybody could just be self-taught. You don't have to spend any money. There's no opportunity cost other than how long it takes you to learn.
Well, no, I don't. I definitely don't think that either.
Well, some people need the structure you get from a college or university or boot camp, and some people will thrive without it. So,
again, going to my daughter, she really needs better structure. Even though the boot camp wasn't enough, we actually put her into this Newmont University. That still wasn't quite enough structure. Maybe she just needed a little bit, had some growing up to do as well to be more serious about studies and such. So, there are definitely people, but she's bound and determined. She wants to be a programmer, but we just haven't found her the right path yet.
Yeah. I do want to jump a little bit more into the job search aspect of things. We've been talking about the other areas of things for about a half hour. So let's say that you've come through a program, be it a 4-year university or boot camp, or you're self-taught and you're thinking, you know what, I'm ready to get a job. What kinds of things do you all recommend before I start talking about what I've put into the course for people to go find a job?
Be a panelist on a podcast.
That helps. People know who you are.
Be friends with Charles Chuck Max Wood. Now,
that may not help you so much.
Portfolio, I think having some work you've done would be, a very simple, not simple, it could take a long time, but having something to show your employee, the place you're applying for, that you've worked, a pretty good portfolio, maybe 3 or 4 different projects. If I'm talking more in web development here, if you're like a back-end developer or doing something else, that might be a different type of portfolio. But that could be a good start to at least to show them what you've done. Having a GitHub, having a LinkedIn, maybe having a personal website could help. If you have some kind of a personal brand might help. If you have your own blog, I mean, the best bet is to see if the employers can come to you first. That would gives you a better advantage point than having you going to them. That's a few thoughts off the top of my head.
What do you think, Joe?
I would say that those are definitely some of the things that I would recommend. I would also say that, I think there's just not one, like Eric, what did he list, 5, 6, 7 things?
Yeah,
there's just not one simple thing that you can do. You might be lucky enough that you went to either a boot camp or university, and at the end of it, there's this job fair, and you just get a job from that, right? But for everybody else, legwork and a big, wide variety of activities. So one of them could be getting involved in open source, right? Mm-hmm. There's plenty of opportunities. It's a bit of a self-starter activity to get involved in open source, but getting involved in open source is one. Being involved in your local meetups, as many as possible. Attend every one of them. Speak when you can. Be involved in those. And every time somebody gets up and says that they're hiring, go talk to them. And every time you get up, mention that you're looking for a job. That's another great way to go to conferences, because conferences are attended by a lot of sponsors who are looking for it. And if you're limited on funds, a lot of conferences have scholarships that you can get. Harder to get if you're a white male, but there are scholarship opportunities out there. So going to conferences and talking to the employers. And here's a little tip that probably a lot of conference organizers wouldn't want given out, but the security is pretty lax at conferences. So if you just want to go in and talk to their sponsors, that's usually something that nobody's going to bother you too much about without a ticket. So if there's a local conference that's going on, I would definitely not recommend that you go in and try to steal a seat, because you can usually watch their talks online without paying. But go in and talk to their sponsors. I don't think you're too likely to get bounced from that activity, and just see which ones of them are hiring. Blogging, like Eric said, getting a presence on YouTube, and doing anything you could do to get your name known, and then differentiate yourself from the other people. Work on your own personal projects as much as possible. Keep learning to learn new skills so that you can be educated about stuff. They'll be asking about things. The more stuff that you can say, oh, I know a little bit about that, or I've heard of that, or I watched a short video about that. That's way better than saying I've never heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
You could go, this sounds a little creepy, but I've heard it work for one person. You could go to LinkedIn, find out who the hiring manager is for these companies that you're wanting to work for, and then friend them on LinkedIn, try to talk to them, see if they're hiring, maybe build some kind of relationship with them before you go see them and actually interview with them. You have to do it in the right way, though.
That's one of the tactics out of my course.
Okay. Yeah. If you don't do it the right way, it becomes like you're a creepy stalker. But if you do it the right way, then it might work.
Yeah. Don't creepy stalker. I provide some message templates and scripts for people for that. But
I would also say, sorry, go ahead.
Joe mentioned the first thing that I tell people to do, and that is, before they do anything else, go find a local meetup or 3. Right. And
I would also say that even though most recruiters are not going to be interested in a junior level, because they're not going to be recruiting much the way of junior level, if you can somehow talk to some recruiters and just find out what companies are hiring, because they may not advertise much that they're hiring, but if they're hiring regular developer positions, they might be looking for junior, and then that helps you identify which companies to look at and talk to. But going to the meetups is also a great way. You talk to everybody that you possibly can, find out who they're working for, and then go to those companies and look and see if they have open positions. Send out resumes unsolicited, even if they don't say that they're hiring. still figure out who the hiring manager is, send out your resume, because you never know when they're just saying, maybe we should start hiring for this position. All of a sudden resume comes in and they feel like, this is a pretty decent fit. And then you hire that way. Expand your LinkedIn network. Most jobs are found through a friend of a friend and not directly by yourself.
Yeah. And that's the whole point, right? Is that if you are on their radar when they start looking for somebody, then you don't have to compete with hundreds of resumes. You have to compete with a couple other people who know somebody at the company. The other thing is that if you can stand out in some way, then that also helps you, because then you're not just a resume, right? You're a face with a name, and, we know who you are. And so all of those things kind of play into it. And ultimately then your job is just to convince them that you're the kind of fit that they're looking for, or that you can do the job that they need you to do. And it's a lot easier when, they're not overwhelmed with a number of people that are applying for the job. A few other things that I'm just going to put out there, because we're kind of running out of time, is look for companies in the area you want to work in. So for example, Joe and I live here in Utah. So, you could look at companies that do the kind of technical work. So let's say you really want to do Vue, or you want to do Ruby on Rails or Express or Koa or something. Go find companies that are using those technologies that are in the area you want to work in. And then, I tell people, go on LinkedIn, see if you can find somebody who works at the company. And you can even just send them a message that basically says, hey, I just graduated from the boot camp. I'm looking for a little bit of career advice. And I noticed that you work at this company and they look pretty interesting. So is there any way I can talk to you about what it takes to work there and get a job there? And especially if you offer to buy them lunch or something, it'll cost you $10 or $20, and you'll get more than you bargained for as far as information on how to apply, who to talk to, what's going on at the company, and what skills you need to build up before you can get the job. And if you can kind of target a couple of companies that way, it really sets you up really nicely. The other thing is then if you're going to the meetups, you can ask questions about those topics at the meetups and see if you can get somebody to help you understand them there. And so you start kind of building up to the point where you're the kind of person that these folks want to hire. And then, interact with them in any way that they can. You can, so that you're going to their events and contributing to open source or building against their APIs or things like that. And there's all kinds of stuff like this that I've got in that course. But anyway, I think we're out of time, so I'm going to push us to picks. Hi, this is Charles Max Wood, and I've been asked more times than I can count, how do I stay current? There's a lot to this question, and I'm working on a solution: code badges. That's right. You heard me right. Basically, the idea is that you come and do a code badge, and that gets you an introduction to a topic. Then you can decide if you want to pursue it further. But while working on the badge, you gain enough proficiency to be able to pick it up again if you need. A lot of technology comes through on the bleeding edge, and not all of it sticks, but the principles do. So doing badges on the technologies that will get you ahead will provide you with experience needed to stay competitive. Plus, it offers social proof that you know something about the topic. The project is on Kickstarter right now. You can support it and get on the launch list at codebadge.org. Go ahead, Joe.
I just have one pick, which is the Framework Summit. It's coming up. It's going to be awesome. Plenty of Vue content. Got the Vue team there doing a keynote. It's going to be an amazing event and a nice Vue full day workshop on learning Vue. So if you're interested in learning Vue, that's a great place to come and take a workshop by Hassan DJ, who wrote one of the really good Vue books. He'll be teaching the all-day workshop on Monday, the 1st of October.
Awesome. And I'll be there as well. So you can go meet Joe, and you can meet me too. All right. Erik, what are your picks?
All right. I will continue the learning theme that we're talking about in this episode, learning how to get a job and the tips. So my tip is I have a course. By the time this video comes out, it will be out. It's the Create Awesome Vue.js Apps with Nuxt.js. If you guys don't know Nuxt.js is a really cool way of creating Vue.js apps that has some server-side rendering built into it. So this course, it's about 6 to 8 hours long, and it has just tons of information, not just about Nuxt, but also Vue. So if you're a brand new Vue person and you want to kind of get a jump start on getting started with Vue, you got to check it out. So it's at school.programwitheric.com, and that's with a K. So school.programwitheric.com.
Awesome. Well, I should mention my course. If you go to getacoderjob.com, it'll take you to the right place. Or you can just go to devchat.tv and look at the courses that are there. And I'm going to throw out a couple other picks. I'm going to be at Framework Summit, like I mentioned. And then I'm also going to be in a few other places. So I'll just let you know what those are real quick. I'm going to be at CES in January. So if you live in or around Las Vegas, or you're going to be there for CES, let me know. Happy to grab lunch or something and get off my feet, because CES involves a lot of walking. And I'm also going to be going to Podcast Movement, which is a podcasters conference. It's going to be in Philadelphia this year. So definitely keep an eye out for that as well. And the only other pick I have, and I've picked this on every show I've recorded this week, so maybe you can track how far ahead we are on all the different shows by this. But I rented some stuff from Home Depot Tool Rental to work on my yard, because I don't really want to own a rototiller, for example. But we've been working on the yard. We killed all the grass and weeds in our yard because the weeds were winning the fight. And I'm going to be putting sod in on Saturday, but I wanted to kind of till it under and give it a chance to kind of start to break down before then. And so, rented a tiller from Home Depot Tool Rental. And it turns out that they have a number of other tools that I don't necessarily need to own that I also rent sometimes. So if you're looking for tools, even heavy machinery, they rent all that stuff there. So, all right. Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
All right. We will wrap this one up, and we will catch everyone next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CacheFly.com to learn more.